Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing an emitter swap on the Sofirn Sc33 and my Wurkkos Ts22. Actually, this isn't my Wurkkos, it's actually for one of my subscribers in Hungary. And we spoke for a long time and finally came to agreement. And I did an emitter swap for him and shipped it to Hungary. It was not cheap, but it was an interesting experience. So I'm taking the XHP70.3 out of the Sc33 and I'm swapping it with another 70.3, but I have some high CRI 9050 4000 Kelvin 70.3. So I wanted to get something high CRI in these lights, kind of see how it looks, and it looks pretty good, to be honest. But thanks for stopping by. This is gonna be, I have it in fast forward because it's a long video. As it does take twice as long with two lights. All right, so on this Sc33, it has a strange ground cable, that white cable that's connected to a screw. I don't know if you can see it. So I'm just popping off the center rings right here, and I do recommend using angled tweezers if you have angled. I was using straight, but anyways. Alright. So I'm going to remove the contacts from the Sc33. So you want to... So I think the heat I'm using is about 720 degrees Fahrenheit. You want to tin the tip with solder before you touch the contacts. That way they come right off. If you're holding your soldering iron on a solder joint and nothing's happening, you're doing something wrong. Because as you can see, these come right off. So I have a clean tip. It's set about 720 degrees. And right there, that's solder flux or flux paste. Yeah, used lots of that. And that just preserves, so it just helps everything run more smoothly when you're soldering. So I'll add a little blob of solder at the end of my soldering iron. That way it heats up more area and the leads come right off. Alright. So same thing with removing the PCBs. It's easier with angled tweezers, and you would think after I've done this so many times that I would learn that, but anyways. Alright, so we're going to clean the back of the PCBs, get that thermal paste off, and I use 99% isopropyl alcohol. That's very important. You don't want to use 70% as there's water in there as well. And interesting note, the Sc33 MCPCB is actually gold-plated. So I thought that was interesting. And a nice thing to see, as it will not corrode. Right here, I'm checking the direction of my LEDs. So I have this little jewelry inspection light. And it's really handy. It was maybe $9 off Amazon. I'll link it below, but it helps me if some LEDs have their little symbols are harder to read. So on these CRIs there's a square, and on the newer 70.3s there's a positive sign. So you can see the positive sign goes on the positive side, the square side goes on the negative side, and on the older ones it's a circle. Well, even I think on the 50.3s they have a circle. Alright, so now I'm gonna, that's some solder wick. I do remove the old solder just in case, because I want these joints to be as clean and as shiny as possible. So take some solder wick, and I do it while it's on the hot plate, as it warms the solder from both sides. And I used to like check the temperature on the hot plate when I was doing this, but usually once you start to see smoke from the flux, the LEDs are ready to come off. So just let them warm up, and they come right off. And I use Chip Quick. This is solder paste, and the tip's a little gunked up, but the thing here is, okay, so these little lines I'm putting on, they're not uniform. You know, I look like a blindfolded artist, like I'm just painting all over the place with that stuff. And the reason is once that heats up, it just kind of melts like butter, and then it turns into solder, and it's almost like a magnet to the actual solder pad, or the MCPCB positive negative pads. So I'm just checking the direction. I want to make sure my positives on my positive side, my negatives on my negative side, and always double check yourself on that. So right here, you're going to see the solder paste, it'll start to like kind of melt like butter, right here, and then boom, it like liquefies and sucks underneath the LED. And I just lightly tap the top and get those little solder balls out. You don't really need to do this, but I don't know, I've kind of made a habit of doing it. And I'll roll the solder balls kind of around the LED, and they kind of like snowball. Then I'll take the big solder ball off. And then when you're removing the PCBs from your hot pad, you want to make sure and keep it level, because if you go at an angle, those MCPCBs are still really hot, and your LED will slide right off. It happened to me one time, and it hasn't happened since. So once you pull them off the hot pad, you want to just let them sit for a little bit and cool off. And here I'm cleaning the inside of the TS22, and I'm just cleaning the edges. I want to make sure there's no thermal paste anywhere, like on the wires or anything. Alright, so now I unplugged the hot plate, I put them back on here, and now I'm going to solder new joints on there with brand new solder. And you want to tin your tip, and then add just a little bit, and you need to keep your joints small, because they are going to be under a reflector. Granted, I still put Kapton tape over my positive side solder joint, but you know, it's easier if you just solder it correctly. Alright, so now I use my tweezers and I kind of scrape the MCPCBs and to get all the flux and dirt and grime off, because I want my circuit boards to look nice and white and clean. You know, especially since this is for it's an international job. It's not somebody that can just ship it to me in a couple days, you know, if there's an issue. So I make sure everything is perfect with this one. And this one is the SC33. So it is an interesting MCPCB. You can see how like that top left half is kind of missing. Well, it is missing. And it's because there's for the electronic switch, they're just wired different. I don't know the mechanics of them, but there's an extra wire there, and that's for the electronic switch, and you can just leave that alone. All right, so I checked the polarity, or the positive and negatives, and now I have an LED tester, and I'm just making sure that they work before I put them away. That's the LED backlit tester. You can get it off AliExpress for like $10. All this stuff is pretty cheap. Alright, so I use Arctic MX6 thermal paste, and you barely need to use any of it. I use way too much here, but I'm kind of like still learning how much thermal paste to use. I used to use a ton, but you really don't need that much. You can kind of put a little bit in the middle and then just press down on your pad. Alright, time to put them back in. So I use a Q-tip with that alcohol and clean my negative and positive wires, as I don't want any thermal paste on there. And the Arctic thermal paste is conductive. I think this white stuff is not conductive, and honestly I need to get some of this because it's kind of a pain having conductive thermal paste. So especially with the Arctic, it has silver in it, so silver is the best conductor. So let's see, now I'm putting them back together. So make sure, if you don't know how to solder, I can do like a solder class. I've really just learned over the past couple months, but I've gotten way better. And as you can tell, I'll show you right here. My solder joints used to never look like this. Those are nice and shiny, and they are tiny, and the wires are hidden in the solder blob. Alright, now to the SC33. And don't hesitate to use a lot of solder, the flux paste. Tin your tips, and literally you're in and out. So if you're holding your soldering iron on your solder joints for a long time, all right, look at this one, nice and shiny. That's what you want. Small shiny joints. This is the Sofirn Sc33 with a CRI XHP70.3 HI R9050 high CRI, about 4,000 kelvins. This is moon mode, low, or I'm sorry, it goes moon, eco, low, medium, high, and then turbo. Alright, so back to moon, eco, low, medium, high, turbo. And I measured it, it's about It's a little over 3,000 lumens. And I mean, the beam looks pretty similar to the way it did before because it was the same LED, just different temperature. And of course, this is a higher CRI version. But I'm going to stick with this LED instead of the cool white. Alright, this is the Wurkkos Ts22 with a CRI XHP70.3 HI R9050. It's 4,000 kelvins. This is moon, low, medium, high, turbo, decent amount of throw with a lot of flood. Alright, so this is moon, low, medium, high, and turbo. I'm really happy with this. Looks a lot better than the stock LED. So this is going to be a comparison between the Sofirn Sc33 on my right and the Wurkkos Ts22 on my left. Both have 4,000 Kelvin XHP70.3 highs. These are both high CRI LEDs. Here's high. Ts22. Sc33. Ts22. Sc33. Alright, let's go to turbo. Ts22 on the left. Sc33 on the right. It looks like daylight color. Sc33, Ts22. Definitely more throw from the Ts22. Throw looks about the same. Sc33. These are getting hot. Alright. So, my Sc33 is on my right. This is moon. Here's my Ts22. I'll put them both on turbo. Ts22. Sc33. Ts22. And I should have worn a glove. These suckers are getting hot. Sc33. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe. It helps me out tremendously. The rest of you, stay bright. I'll see you in the next video. Ts22, Sc33. Alright, so as you can tell from the videos and the drone shots, that the emitter swaps were a success. And if you've been here for this long, remember to subscribe. It does help me out quite a bit. And thank you for watching. Remember to stay bright and stay classy.